I'd like you to turn your Bibles to a passage that we all love so much. This was our 31st night passage. If you remember, if you were here on 31st night, you know what I spoke on. Psalm 23. I'm just going to read the first 3 verses today for you. So as you open your Bibles, follow along with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I purposefully picked up these 3 verses because what we're going to talk about today is in those 3 verses. We began a series called The Dream Catchers in the beginning of this year, in January, first week. And then we heard a story, we saw a parable of a person called Ordinary who took on a journey because he received a dream from the dream giver. And as he took this journey, before he could actually capture that dream, he had to face few hurdles which he had to cross in order to fully grasp what the dream is all about. And we talked about 7 different hurdles that he faced and how he could overpowered them, and then finally caught the dream that God, the dream giver, had given him. We saw a few of them for the last 4 weeks, and this week we will look at the 5th one as we study the word. The 5th hurdle is what we call self-absorption. Now we called it surrendering, selfishness, but I wanted to retitle it as self-absorption. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This psalm that we just read, these 3 verses, talk about how can we cure self-absorption. As we emerge from desert lands, last week we talked about wastelands, continuous failures, continuous disappointments. As we take the journey, there are many times we feel as if God abandoned us. We feel as if God is nowhere to be seen, and everything that we do, even though we are doing it right, is going wrong, ending up in a failure, and we don't really know how to react. And it hurts us a lot, especially when we do all right and still face failures in what we do. And we talked about how we can overcome that. The wastelands, the dry lands, the dry seasons, desert lands. Now, especially after you emerge from all these failures, disappointments, and the dry seasons where God is not to be seen anywhere, you are wounded, you are hurt. Probably you emerge from them a little less trust in God. You probably start distrusting God. You're not really sure whether God will always be there or not for you. Sometimes our disappointments and our failures can hurt us so much that even though we don't question the existence of God, even though we don't question the power of God, we emerge with doubts about God. Does God really care about me? Is God fully in my life? Is he really in my back? Is he going to be there at all? Kind of questions, that bog you. And so when you emerge from this desert land with all those hurts, disappointments, you are emotionally and spiritually depleted. You feel dried out. You don't know, you kind of really need rest. That's what David is talking about, Psalm 23. I actually suspect David would have written this psalm after he became the king, not when he's a shepherd. Because it actually makes more sense to me, David as a king turning back and looking at his life as a shepherd, and now what he had gone through, the valley of shadow of death, all that, and sitting in the table in front of his enemies, how God prepared the table for him. All this, probably after he became the king and saw God's hand upon his life, he would have penned down this amazing psalm. But the first 3 verses, and especially one statement in these first 3 verses, is our talk today. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He restores my soul. Rest in our journey as dreamers is necessary. Ever so often, we need pit stops when we take this journey of chasing our dream. Especially when we are, exhausted, when we have so many disappointments and failures, sometimes you really need to pause and take rest. Rest is a very important thing for God. You see, if you don't stop, God stops you and gives you rest. Do you know that? If you don't take rest, then God breaks your leg and gives you rest. We call that a sanctuary time. That's the time with God. It's the time where you spend in the presence of God, reflecting on who He is. It may be a weekend of church retreat. It can be a time when you take out your family and you personally take out time to sit down and have a personal devotion. It can be hospital. It can be a time where you see this greatness of creation and then lost, overwhelmed by the greatness of your God. Just tears start flowing out of your eyes, and you really are caught up with the movement of this beauty all around you, and God just takes over your life. It's as if God ambushes you, You are unsuspectingly going, and then God suddenly comes right in front of you and then scares your heart out and then engulfs you. If you don't go into His presence, He will then come to you. You don't really want that, by the way. But God really, really wants us to take rest in our journeys. Really, really wants us to take rest when we are working, overworking ourselves out. In our journey, in our jobs, in our relationships, as we face so many hurts, so much of stress, God would want us to take rest. That's probably why He made it a commandment. In the 10 commandments, the third commandment is what? How many of you know there are 10 commandments in the Bible? You know, right? Okay. What is the fourth commandment? I'm sorry. What is the fourth commandment? Follow the Sabbath day. Take rest on the third or fourth. Somebody open Exodus chapter 20, verses 8. Exodus chapter 20, verses 8. Actually, I want you to read it as I read it for you. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, or your male servant or female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now here is the point. God is extremely specific that we must all take rest in our journey. That we must all take rest every week. Seventh day, 6 days you work, on the seventh day you take rest. You also give rest to your son and daughter. Don't make them study on the seventh day. That's the point there. Don't make them do the same thing that they are doing for the last 6 days. This is the day they too take rest. But they take rest in His presence. That's the point. Sabbath day, you take rest in the presence of God. That's why Sabbath day is holy. You take rest in the presence of God does not mean you go to church. That's not what it means. It means you take rest in His presence. Take time out to be in His presence. He's asking us to do it every week. We don't even do that once in a year. to take time to spend time with God. That's why it is necessary for us, the dreamers, to have pit stops, to have rest times, sanctuary times. It is necessary for all of us. It is important. Why? Because resting in the sanctuary is the primary source of refreshment, reformation, and renewal. Resting in the sanctuary is the time of refreshment. It is the time of reformation, and it is the time of renewal. Let's go back to the story of Ordinary. As he emerged from this desert, completely exhausted, tired, physically hurt, physically weak, spiritually weak, emotionally weak, mentally weak, he's not able to think anything, he's just dried out. Everything that he has is just going blank. And as he walked out of the wasteland, he enters into what he assumed to be a sanctuary, because it was so beautiful. The greenery all around him, the tall trees, and the water right in front of him, it looked so fresh and so beautiful. And it was then, as he comes to the edge of this beautiful scene that is in front of him, he hears the voice of the dream giver telling him, "Come to the water." What he meant is get into the water. So the Ordinary then gets into the water, and as he spent time there, his wounds are taken away from his body. All the physical hurts were healed completely. And he emerges from that water refreshed completely. And as he comes out of the water, he then hears the dream giver's voice the second time when he said, "Come into the light." So right in front of him, he sees a light shining. And as he moves towards that light, all this thing that is around him, this green, the greenery and the water, all that is there that actually refreshed him, started disappearing in the light. So he walks into this light, this brilliant light, which he only assumes should be coming from the dream giver. And as he stands there, he feels naked because the light engulfs him completely. And as all that he can see in this light is all the things that are wrong with him. Light exposed him to his weaknesses. Light exposed him to his sin. And it is then he began to confess to the dream giver and ask him to renew him, clean him up. And as the dream giver began to work in his life, all that is inside started getting healed spiritually. So there is a reformation taking place in his spirit. Then once he now sees that there is no sin in him, he then hears the third time the voice of the dream giver saying, "Come higher. Come up to the mountain. Come closer." Now he began to walk towards God. And as he closed near to the dream giver, the only thing that he does is, as this tall figure that he is, as he began getting closer to the dream giver, he began to stoop down, bend down, because this is greatness of God getting revealed to him. And there, in the very presence of God, dream giver asked him, "Give me your dream back." "But I worked for it so hard. I was the one who suffered and struggled. I was the one who was being chased because I followed your dream. Now it's my dream and you are asking me to give it back." "Yep. Give your dream back to me." And there, as he surrendered the dream back to the dream giver, there is a renewal that took place in his self. His complete self-absorption has been taken away from him. He has learned to self-surrender to the dream giver. That's what sanctuary time does to us. It refreshes us, reforms us, renews us, so that when the dream giver gives back the dream, you are now ready to handle that dream. Let's explore that, those 3 steps. Remember this, always in the sanctuary time, these are the 3 steps that will follow each one after the other. They are in the same sequence, they never change. You get refreshed first, then you get reformed, then you are renewed. This is the same sequence. Let's try and explore those 3 steps that the dream giver makes you go through. The first one, why does he do that? That's the question that I'm going to answer now. Why does he do that? Number 1, refreshment. When he asks you to come to the water, he takes time to cleanse you of your hurt, of your emotional hurts, the baggage that you're carrying. He tries to wash it up from you. This guy walked into the water completely dirt. He had gone through this wasteland, faced sandstorms, faced so many thorns, the roads on which he had to cross through, so many thorns which hurt him. He was hurt by the rocks that he had come across, the rocks that he had to climb, all those hurts, physical and emotional hurts that he was carrying. As he carried them into the sanctuary, the first thing that God did is clean it. You need sanctuary time because God uses that time to clean your emotions, to clean your soul. You see, resting without God can give a physical rest probably. You know, many of you probably take time out, went to Palma Exotica and took rest there. Now, rest in Palma Exotica can give you physical rest. But rest in the sanctuary, in the presence of God, it doesn't matter where it is. In the presence of God, not only gives you physical rest, but it actually gives you refreshment inside the soul. Your body is renewed, your body is refreshed, but your soul gets refreshed in the presence of God. That's why God needs you to come and take rest in His presence. Every so often. Not once in a year, not even once in 6 months, but every week. Every week. That's a prescription of God. We don't do that, do we? We go to church, we think that is the sanctuary time. No. That's not sanctuary time. Do you know why I'm not calling it a sanctuary time? Many of you come exactly at 10, some of you come after 11. Doesn't matter to me. But you leave right after this church. You don't even wait. At exactly 12 as we close the service, or 12:15 as we close the service, you walk away from this place. Where did you get rest in the sanctuary? When did you actually take time to allow God to emotionally clean you up? Why do you think we have so much time allocated to worship? It's that time that you open yourself for God to move in and among you to start cleaning you emotionally. Bring healing into your hearts. That's why we take time to worship. Because God is now in the control of your life in this place. You don't do that. So this is not your sanctuary time. Don't think this is your sanctuary time. Your sanctuary time should be the time that you actually spend time in the presence of God. Give God opportunity to clean you up. How many of you take bath once in a year? One person, at least, please. How many of you take bath once in a month? Thank God nobody lifted their hands. At least once in a week. But every day, I take bath. I don't know about you. Please lift your hand up. If you take bath every day. You take bath every single day, but you don't want to spend time in the presence of God, allowing God to clean you up. Sad, isn't it? He wants you to be in His presence because He really wants to give you rest by cleaning you up, healing you up. Just as often as we take bath every day, so often we must spend time in the presence of God so that He can refresh your soul. You see, resting in the sanctuary revives your soul emotionally. You get healed. You get cleansed up. There's a fresh sense of your own life. As you face the world around you, you will feel fresh when you walk out of the water. Water is always symbolized for cleansing, isn't it? That's why he asked him to get into the water. Get into the water, I'm going to clean you up completely. That's number one. You really need to take rest, because that's the time God takes time to heal you. Takes time to take away those hurts, start applying medicine on your hurts, on your wounds, and cleaning them so that you can be healed. Do that every so often in your journey. The second one, why we need to take rest, is because of reformation. Reformation of you, of your spirit. Come into the light was what the dream giver told this guy, ordinary. Why do you think God asked him to, the dream giver asked him to come into the light? Look at 1 John chapter 1. It's a brilliant verse that you need to read. 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 to 7. This is the message we've heard from him, from Jesus. That's what he meant there. And proclaim to you, what is that? That God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. If we say we have fellowship with him while we walk in the darkness, we lie and we do not practice truth. So, but if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his Son, cleanses us from what? From all our sin. You need time in the presence of God, because not only your soul is revived, but your spirit is reformed. God starts working in your spirit, cleansing you from your sin. As light exposes the darkness inside you, as the light of God exposes the weaknesses inside you, you get to see them with your own eyes. And there is nothing but for you to get buckle down on your knees and ask God to forgive you and cleanse you from your sin. That's why come into the light. Come into the water and come into the light. That's where you get cleansed completely from your sin and you are reformed. He's doing readjustments with you, realignments, so that you can be transformed into something like Christ. If any one of you are followers of F1 or any other car races, you know that every car race has something called pit stop. The pit stop is extremely necessary in car races. It is necessary. For every few laps that they take, they come into the pit stop, and in the pit stop, everything gets changed. The tires, they get refueled. If there is a mechanical problem, they get readjusted, retuned, so that they can get back into the race. That's exactly what God is trying to ask you to do. Take a pit stop so that he can change the tires. He can refuel you, readjust if there are some problems in your heart mechanically, then help you to get back to the race, because we're all in the race, isn't it? That's what Hebrews chapter 12 says to us, that we are in this great arena being watched by the cloud of witnesses, and we are asked to run this race faithfully. But if we have to keep running the race, we need pit stops. You can't keep running. At some point, you will lose all your fuel. At some point, one of the tires will burst, and then you would be in a serious accident, never to be recovered. Don't do that. Don't come to a point where you ignore the depletion of your fuel. Don't put the rubber to so much test that it will burst. You really need to take pit stops for God to realign, rearrange you, so that you can keep running the race. It's necessary. Reformation takes place. Resting in sanctuary reforms your spirit, See, not only our sin is exposed, light tells us how dark we are and thus humbling us in His presence. That's why ordinary, once he saw the light and as he asked for forgiveness, when he began his journey to the third call, he began to stoop down because he understood he's small. We take rest because our soul revives. We take rest because our spirit needs reformation, transformation. Number 3, renewal. We take rest because in the sanctuary, God teaches you to surrender. In the sanctuary, God teaches you to take the self out and throw it away. As you now come closer to God, higher up to the mountain, the Lord passes by you, and then you are overwhelmed by the greatness of God. You see, your emotional hurts are cleaned, your sins are completely forgiven. Now you're a transformed person. You walk into the holiness of God. You're overwhelmed by the greatness of God. It makes you humble. It makes you feel small. And God needs you to see His greatness every time you spend time with Him. Do you know why? Unless the greatness of God is understood and acknowledged and then surrendered to, you can never achieve greatness. Our greatness depends on our understanding of who is great. Get that into your head. Our greatness comes from our understanding of who is actually the great one. The moment you realize who is great, that is the beginning of your greatness. That's the time God starts lifting you up, higher. Because you're getting lower in yourself. You're surrendering completely to this great God. You know this is a great God. And as you keep surrendering to Him, He then begins to lift you up. That's why worship. Worship is not because we are doing some time pass for you to come and join us for the word. We're doing worship because this is where we buckle down. This is where we tell God, you are great, not me. This is where we tell God, you are great than my job, than my money, than my time. Everything belongs to you, God. You are the one who is great. The moment you start doing that, then God starts lifting you up to heights you have never imagined. In your workplace, in the same place that you are sitting today, same cubicle that you are sitting every day, same among the same team members with whom you are working, God will start lifting you up if you buckle down in His knees and acknowledge His greatness. That's what God needed to show him to ordinary. You see, God wanted to teach him, it's not your dream that is great. It is me who gave you the dream that is great. Irrespective of how big your vision is never greater than the one who gave you the vision. That's what ordinary needed to learn. That's what you and I need to learn. And it only happens when we buckle down, when we get into the sanctuary. There can be many here, sadly, who will go through the wasteland but never enter into the sanctuary. You might still get your dream done, but the point is you will never achieve the greatness that God actually had in store for you because you never surrendered. You might actually be successful, but your life is of no use. Absolutely. Because you don't know who is actually the great one. I was reading an article on Antilla. If you don't know what is Antilla, go to Mumbai. You will see this 27-floor building called Antilla, named after a mysterious island or something like that, by the richest man in India, second richest man in Asia, whatever. About that building, Tata made a comment. It is unethical to show off your wealth like this in building a 27-floor building for just for 4 people and have 600 people maintain that every day. It's really unethical living in a country that needs money and show off your wealth like that. At least that money that you spent on that should be used for some other cause that can help the country to get better. And others can become like you. That's what Ratan Tata had actually said, talking about Antilla. You know whom I'm talking about, right? I don't have to talk more than that. But when I was reading that article, that's when I've realized that's what will happen to all of us if we have money, success, jobs, everything without God. We will flaunt our money, but we still don't really know how to enjoy it. Have you ever seen his son? You know how difficult the life must be for that guy. Isn't it? Sad. I have all the money in the world, but my son cannot even wear proper clothes. Cannot sit in one single chair. It's just sad. I hope I'm making my point to you. Don't become rich, don't become successful without spending time in the presence of God. Without sanctuary times. You need sanctuary times to tell you you are nobody. To tell you you are somebody because of the great one that you have. That's why God needs you to come and take rest and set it apart as a holy day. It's not just for you, it's for your son and your daughter. Isn't it? Not just for your son and your daughter. What else? Your servant, male or female, your servant and your household. Everything in your house must take rest in the presence of God so that everybody understands it is God who is more important than anything else. So on a Sunday morning, don't make that an excuse for schools. If your son does not participate something on a Sunday, he's not going to lose anything at all. Absolutely. Sorry about that. I know I'm going to hurt you. He's not going to lose anything at all. Absolutely. He gains God. I think that's a far better inheritance that you can give to your son or your daughter than a cricket cup or than a grade in his exams. Really, I'm sorry to say that for all the parents, including myself. Because we forget the rest day is not just for us, but for our children and our servants and everything in our house. God needs us to take rest in Him. You see, if you don't, then God gives you rest. And sometimes His rest can be really long, more than what you really want it to be. And that's not what you really wanted. Because He has to give you that long rest. He has to clean you, rub you off completely. For 1 year you have not taken bath. So He has to clean you, give you a shampoo bath, give a haircut. All that has to happen. Why give Him a chance to do that? That's why He made it a command, taking rest. He made it a command. Elijah, in 1 Kings chapter 19, you'll see this story. So I'm just going to recount the story for you. You can go back and read the story. Elijah is running away from a woman called Jezebel. He just killed 600 of the Baal's prophets, and Ahab doesn't know what to do. He goes to his wife. The king goes to his wife and tells her, this is what Elijah has done. He really don't know how to handle Elijah. So Jezebel decides she's going to kill him, and Elijah starts running. When he heard that, he was deeply depressed. That's what the Bible says. He was deeply depressed, and he was afraid, began to run. Began to run. He never took time to ask God, what should I do now? He began to run, and this is what Bible says. Go back and check it, okay? Underline these words that I'm highlighting. He himself had gotten into wilderness. It's very interesting. He himself had gotten into wilderness. That means if I panic, then I make my own decisions. I am the one who will end up in wilderness. God doesn't send you there. You are the one who is going to walk into desert lands, dry seasons, on your own. So Elijah ran into the wilderness, and then he began to cry, why, God, that you kept me alive? Please kill me. Who took the decision? He was the one who was afraid. He was the one who thought Jezebel is going to kill him. He was the one who decided that he's going to run. He is the one who decided where to run. And now he's complaining to God, why did you keep me alive? Just kill me, no God. Don't we all do that? Elijah has been working so hard, God needed Elijah to take rest. There, in that wilderness, as he lost his, exhausted, doesn't know what to do. He's actually emotionally, physically, spiritually exhausted. Just exhausted. He doesn't know what to do. It was at that time, God sent an angel. An angel comes as Elijah is sleeping. He wakes him up, gives him a bread and tells him, eat. Elijah eats, goes back to sleep. He's that tired. Did not even bother that an angel is actually sitting with him and giving him food. That's a marvelous experience, isn't it? To have an angel sit with you and give you food. Elijah was he really wanted to take rest. So he ate the food, slept. Again, the angel of the Lord woke him up. Second time. Gave him some more food after a few days. Once he ate that, that's when he received strength. And he began his journey. Bible says 40-day journey to Mount Horeb. Goes to Mount Horeb. Hides himself in the cave, still running away. And there, God began to speak to him. Telling Elijah, come out. Come on, I want to show you who I am. First, he asked him a question, why are you here? Elijah tells him, God, you don't know what's happening with me? I've been chased by everybody and all the prophets of God are killed. I'm the only one left. Now even I'm being pursued. I'm going to die. I don't know what I did wrong. I did everything right. I. That's the statement. Go back and read it. That's what Elijah says. I. All. He has an eye disease. That's what we do in our prayers, isn't it? Always talk about ourselves. So God tells him, come out. Let me show you who I am. Bible uses one brilliant word. God passed him by. What an experience it would be, isn't it? When God passes you by. It will break your heart. It will break your heart so much that there is nothing but buckling down, bowing your head and saying, God, what am I looking at? You know, by not taking time in sanctuary, that's what you're missing. God passing you by. And God passes by, changing Elijah's life. Asks him one more time, why are you here? Elijah repeats the same thing. Look at what God tells him. Hey, go back the same way. Stop there, okay? He gives a lot of instruction after that, but just stop there. Tomorrow, spend time in go back to the same place. Just that one verse. Start thinking about your life. From where he is running away, God says, go back to the same place. Go back to the same place. Now, Elijah gets up, after God speaking to him, gets up and goes back to the same place from where he was running away. Why would he do that? He now understood it's not about him anymore. It's not about him anymore. It's about the one who is sending him. You need to understand. In sanctuary times, God brings you to that place. A place where you understand dream is not yours at all. The dream that God gave you is His. So therefore, His glory should be the primary goal, not you. Self-absorption, He takes it away and makes you come to the point of self-surrender. So 3 things are happening there. Number 1, as the refreshing takes place, your soul revives. As the reformation takes place, your spirit is transformed. Your spirit inside is transformed. All your sin is taken away. You're cleansed completely. You're now a new man. And then as the renewal starts taking place, a recommitment comes to you as you buckle down in front of this greatness of God. And then there is a self-surrender. God brings you to that point of self-surrender and then takes complete control of your life. That's when your dream becomes bigger and greater. Always. So imagine now in your journey, as you keep taking pit stops, sanctuary times, resting times, imagine the kind of things that will start happening inside you. Imagine how big your dream starts getting bigger and bigger. The wider it becomes. You always thought of small things. God starts showing you big things. Amazing stuff that He's going to do with you. Each of you. Don't miss it. God always wanted to give us rest, wanted us to take rest. That's one of the reasons why we celebrate communion. Because Christ gave us rest. Rest from this restlessness of trying to find out a solution for our salvation. Trying to find a solution for our sin. What can I do to get rid of this problem, this sin? How can I be renewed? How can I have a better relationships? How can I live a better man? Cross is the answer. Christ gave rest for all those questions, all those searchings, once and for all on the cross. That's the reason we celebrate communion. That's the reason we come together and remember the broken body and the shed blood and say, God, thank you for giving us rest. Thank you for giving us rest. The rugged cross reminds us that Christ gave us our souls, our spirits, our self rest and set us completely free. You see, the point is this. I'm going to give you time to close down and close your eyes and take time to talk to God and worship Him for some time before we partake in communion. But the problem is this, that the choice is always yours. To walk into the sanctuary that is opened for you, or to walk away from the sanctuary, your choice. Your choice. What kind of choice are you going to make today? Let's close our eyes. Have you been running so fast, so hard, you're tiring yourself out? You're chasing the same dream that God gave you, but you're just getting exhausted week after week, day after day. Maybe it's time for you, for some of you, to stop, to pause. If needed, take a break from your work for a few days and sit down in the presence of God. Maybe your family is getting hurt in this process of you trying to become great. You're not able to realize that your family is struggling and there is this friction that is consistently going on in your life. Maybe it's time for you to take a break. Take your family out. Sit down with them in the presence of God. Maybe you need to make it a habit to keep coming into the sanctuary. Maybe you've been doing it, but not so often that you're supposed to do it. So today I give you an opportunity to say, you know what, God? I love sanctuary times. I know I'm getting renewed, but I'm not doing it as I'm supposed to do it. Help me to make this a habit in my life. That's what you need to do, some of you. Some of you need to say, God, I'm sorry for not taking a break at all. I'm chasing this wild dream so much. I know it's a dream that you gave me, but I know that I need to come into sanctuary. So help me, God, to come into sanctuary. That's what you need to pray, some of you. Pray for your family. Maybe along with you, you're driving your family to run after the dream. And that is causing so much strain within the family itself. Maybe it's time for you to take a break and say, as a family, let's just slow down. Get into the presence of God and allow God to refresh us, to reform us, and to